The signal came through at 0347 hours, weak and broken, barely cutting through the static of deep space. Communications Officer Hyun-woo sat up straight in his chair at Terra Border Station Sentinel-9, his coffee forgotten as the computer began piecing together the fragmented transmission. "Sir, we have an emergency broadcast," Hyun-woo called out to his shift commander. "Universal frequency. Running it through the translator now." The words that emerged made his blood run cold. A voice, desperate and terrified, speaking in a language the computer had never encountered before. But the emotion needed no translation. Fear. Pure, absolute fear. "This is colony ship. Yuthari people. Under attack. 40,000 souls. Please. Anyone. They're killing the children. Shields failing. Please." Then silence. The kind of silence that meant death. Hyun-woo's hands shook as he isolated the signal coordinates. The Keelar system, 47 light-years away. He pulled up the sensor data, enhancing the image as much as the long-range scanners allowed. What he saw made him feel sick. A massive colony ship, clearly civilian, surrounded by smaller angular warships. Even from this distance, he could see the weapons fire. He could see the escape pods being targeted and destroyed one by one. "Get me Admiral Ji-won," Hyun-woo said quietly. "Right now." Within minutes, the call went up the chain of command. Admiral Ji-won was in her quarters aboard the flagship Indomitable, reviewing supply reports when her communication panel lit up. She had been with the Terra Defense Fleet for 32 years. She had seen combat in the Outer Rim conflicts. She had negotiated peace treaties and rescued stranded crews. But the recording they played for her that morning changed everything. She listened 3 times. Each time, the screams in the background grew louder in her mind. Each time, the final silence felt heavier. "What do we know about them?" Ji-won asked. "The Yuthari, ma'am. Herbivorous species, never developed weapons technology. They're refugees according to the fragmentary data we pulled, fleeing from a star system that went supernova. That colony ship is all that's left of their world." The intelligence officer paused. "The ships attacking them are Valdrine Dominion." Ji-won's jaw tightened. Everyone knew about the Valdrine, a ruthless empire that had conquered 17 systems in the last century. They took slaves, stripped worlds of resources, and crushed anyone who resisted. The Galactic Council was terrified of them. "Has the Council been notified?" Ji-won asked. "Yes, ma'am. 2 hours ago. They're still debating whether to even discuss it." Of course they were. The Council never acted when it might upset the powerful. Ji-won stood and began putting on her uniform. "Prepare my shuttle. I'm going to Earth Command." The flight to Earth took 6 hours. Ji-won used every minute to gather information. The Yuthari had sent their distress call to 17 different governments. Not one had responded. The Galactic Council had received it first, 4 hours before it reached human space. They had filed it as a situation under observation and moved on to discussing trade regulations. Ambassador Mirai was already at Earth Command when Ji-won arrived. The ambassador looked exhausted, her usually perfect diplomatic composure cracked with frustration. "They won't do anything," Mirai said without preamble. "I spent 3 hours arguing our case. The Council says the Keelar system is in disputed space. They say intervention would set a dangerous precedent. They say we need to respect Valdrine sovereignty." Her voice broke slightly. "They're letting 40,000 people die because they're afraid." Ji-won sat down heavily. "What's the real-time status?" "The colony ship is still holding barely. The Valdrine are playing with them. They could destroy the ship in minutes, but they're hunting the escape pods first. They want the survivors broken before they board and take slaves." Mirai pulled up a hologram showing the Keelar system. 23 Valdrine warships, all military grade. The colony ship has no weapons, no defenses beyond basic shields. How long until those shields fail? Maybe 20 hours? Maybe less. Ji-won stared at the hologram for a long moment. In her 32 years of service, she had always followed orders, always respected the chain of command, always believed in the system. But right now, the system was betraying every value it claimed to uphold. "What's the composition of our 3rd battle group?" she asked quietly. Mirai looked at her sharply. "Admiral, what's the composition?" "Fully mobilized 77 warships. The Indomitable, 4 carriers, 12 heavy cruisers, 20 destroyers, 40 frigates. Another 8,000 personnel on support vessels." Mirai stepped closer. "Ji-won, you can't be thinking they're killing children, Mirai, hunting them in escape pods like animals. And we're sitting here talking about jurisdiction and precedent. Jiwan stood up. Get me a direct line to the defense secretary. The next 2 hours were a blur of conversations, arguments, and desperate pleading. The defense secretary was hesitant. The president was worried about galactic politics. The Joint Chiefs were concerned about overstepping authority. Then, someone leaked the footage. A news intern at Earth's largest network somehow got access to the raw sensor data from Sentinel-9. Within minutes, it was everywhere. Billions of humans across dozens of worlds watched as Valdrine ships methodically destroyed escape pods. They watched as a ship full of children tried to flee and was cut down by plasma fire. They watched as the Yothari colony ship sent another desperate plea that went unanswered. The public reaction was immediate and volcanic. Protests erupted outside government buildings. Social networks exploded with rage. Veterans groups called for immediate action. Religious leaders of every faith demanded humanity intervene. The message was clear and universal. We have to help them. President Wu Jin appeared on every screen across human space 3 hours after the leak. His face was grim. My fellow humans, by now you have all seen what is happening in the Kalar system. You have heard the cries for help. You have watched the horror of the helpless being murdered. He paused. The Galactic Council has chosen inaction. They have chosen politics over morality, but we will not. As of this moment, I am authorizing the full deployment of the Terra Defense Fleet's 3rd Battle Group. Admiral Jiwan will command. Their mission is simple: rescue the Yothari people and stop this massacre. Whatever it takes. The speech lasted only 3 minutes, but it changed the galaxy forever. Admiral Jiwan stood on the bridge of the Indomitable 12 hours later as the 3rd Battle Group assembled. 77 warships, the pride of human military engineering. 40,000 crew members, many of whom had never seen real combat. All of them had volunteered for this mission. Not one had hesitated. Commander Doyun approached her. He was young for a dreadnought captain, only 38, but he had earned his position through skill and courage. The fleet report's ready, Admiral. We can jump to FTL on your order. Jiwan looked out at the assembled ships. Somewhere 47 light-years away, people were dying. People who had done nothing wrong except flee from a dying star. People whose only crime was being weak in a galaxy that worshipped strength. She thought about the Galactic Council, safe in their chambers, debating and discussing while people screamed. She thought about the Valdrine, so confident in their power that they hunted refugees for sport. She thought about humanity's long, bloody history. Centuries of war and violence, of learning the hard way that evil unchallenged only grows stronger. Open a fleet-wide channel, Jiwan ordered. Every screen on every ship showed her face. 40,000 people waited for her words. We are about to do something that will make the galaxy question us. We are going to intervene in a conflict that the powers that be say is none of our business. We are going to fight without permission and act without approval. She paused, her voice hardening. But we are going to do it anyway. Because 40,000 innocent people are dying, and we have the power to save them. History will judge us for this. Let it judge us as the species that refused to stand by while children were murdered. Let it judge us as the ones who answered when no one else would. She nodded to the navigation officer. All ships jumped to FTL. Destination, Kalar system. We're going to war. The stars blurred and stretched as 77 human warships vanished into faster-than-light travel. Behind them, Earth watched and waited. Ahead of them, the Valdrine Dominion had no idea what was coming. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength was not technology or tactics. It was something far more dangerous, the absolute refusal to abandon the helpless no matter the cost. The die was cast. There would be no turning back. Terra Nova shipyards had not seen this level of activity in 20 years. The massive military installation orbiting Mars lit up like a small sun as every dock, every repair bay, every supply station worked at maximum capacity. Ships that had been in maintenance were rushed through final checks. Crews that had been on leave were recalled. The entire machinery of human military power was awakening from its long sleep. Commander Doyun walked through the corridors of the Indomitable with purpose. His dreadnought was the flagship of the fleet, the most powerful warship humanity had ever built. Over 1,200 meters long, bristling with rail cannons and missile batteries, protected by layered shields and composite armor. It had been designed to fight wars, but for most of its service life, it had been a symbol, a deterrent. Now it would be tested for real. Status report, Doyen said as he entered the bridge. His tactical officer looked up. All weapons systems online and fully loaded. Shield generators at 100%. Rail cannons charged and ready. We have enough ammunition for a sustained engagement lasting 4 hours. And the crew? 1,400 personnel aboard. Most are veterans from the Outer Rim conflicts, but we have about 300 who have never seen combat. The tactical officer hesitated. They're nervous, sir. Doyen nodded. They should be. Fear keeps you sharp. It's the ones who aren't afraid that get killed first. He sat in the captain's chair, feeling its weight. Make sure every department head runs combat drills during the jump. I want everyone ready. Across the fleet, similar preparations were happening. On the carrier Thunderbolt, Lieutenant Seokjin was briefing his fighter squadron. At 26, he was one of the youngest aces in the fleet, with over 200 combat sorties under his belt. But those had been against pirates and smugglers. This would be different. Listen up, Seokjin said to the assembled pilots. We're facing Valdrine destroyers. They use plasma weapons, highly effective against shields but slow to recharge. Their fighters are fast but lightly armored. Our advantage is training and coordination. They fight like individuals trying to rack up kills. We fight as a unit. A young pilot raised her hand. Sir, what if there are too many of them? Seokjin looked at her seriously. Then we make every shot count. We protect each other. And we remember why we're doing this. He pulled up an image on the screen. It was from the distress call showing Yothari families huddled in an escape pod seconds before it was destroyed. Those people need us. That's all that matters. In the medical bay of the hospital ship, Mercy, Dr. Nari was organizing her staff. She was a xenobiologist, one of Earth's leading experts on alien physiology. But the information they had on the Yothari was limited to scattered fragments from their distress call. We know they're carbon-based, herbivorous, and breathe an oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere similar to ours, Nari explained to her medical team. But we don't know their blood chemistry, their immune response to our medicines, or their tolerance for our gravity. When we start bringing survivors aboard, treat them gently, monitor everything, assume nothing. One of the nurses spoke up. Doctor, what if they're too badly injured? What if we can't save them? Nari's expression hardened. Then we try anyway. Every single life we save is a victory. Every single life is worth this entire mission. Engineer Minho was in the weapons bay of the cruiser Defiant, overseeing the final checks on the rail cannon systems. The rail cannons were humanity's answer to energy shields. Instead of plasma or lasers, they fired solid projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. Pure kinetic energy that shields struggled to deflect. How's the power coupling? Minho asked his assistant. Stable. We can fire 6 shots in rapid succession before the capacitors need to recharge. After that, 1 shot every 30 seconds. Make it 5 shots and cut the recharge time to 20 seconds. I'd rather have more sustained fire. That's going to stress the systems. The systems can handle it. The question is whether we'll survive long enough for it to matter. Minho ran a diagnostic on the firing computer. Triple check everything. We get 1 shot at this. If the guns jam in combat, people die. Back on E, the Indomitable, Admiral Jiwon was receiving updates from across the fleet. Every ship was reporting ready ahead of schedule. The crews understood the urgency. They also understood the risk. Ambassador Mirai appeared on Jiwon's communication screen. She looked even more exhausted than before. The Council is demanding we turn back, Mirai said. They're threatening sanctions, trade embargoes, formal censure. The Valdrine have sent a message saying any interference will be considered an act of war. Let them threaten, Jiwon replied. We're already committed. Jiwon, you need to understand what you're risking. This could isolate humanity for decades. It could make enemies across the galaxy. The Valdrine Dominion has allies, trade partners, tributary states. If this goes wrong, 40,000 Yothari die, and the galaxy learns that calling for help is pointless because no one will answer. Jiwon leaned forward. Mirai, I know you're trying to manage the political fallout, but I'm telling you right now, politics comes second. Those people come first. If the council wants to punish us for saving lives, then maybe we're in the wrong council. Mireille was quiet for a moment. You sound like you're ready to leave the Galactic Council entirely. If they stand in our way, yes, without hesitation. The conversation ended, and Ji-won returned to her command duties. But Mireille's words stayed with her. This mission would have consequences far beyond the Kellar system. It would force humanity to choose between being part of the galactic community or standing apart from it. Between comfort and conscience. Ji-won had already made her choice. In the crew quarters, stories were spreading. Veterans were sharing experiences with younger crew members. One old sergeant told about the Outer Rim, about fighting against raiders who preyed on isolated colonies. The thing about bullies, he said, is they only understand one language. You can't negotiate with them. You can't reason with them. You have to hit them so hard they never want to get up again. Another veteran, a woman who had served on a frigate, talked about rescue missions. You know what stays with you? The faces of the people you save. The way they look at you when they realize they're going to live. That's why we do this job. Not for glory or medals. For those faces. The younger crew members listened and absorbed these lessons. They were scared, but they were also determined. They had all seen the footage of the Yothari being hunted. They had all heard the distress call. This wasn't abstract anymore. This was real people needing real help. In the fighter bays, maintenance crews were working around the clock. Each fighter was checked, rechecked, and checked again. Weapons were loaded. Fuel tanks were filled. Pilots ran simulation after simulation, practicing attack patterns and evasive maneuvers. Lieutenant Seokjin sat in his cockpit during one of these simulations, his hands on the controls, his eyes tracking targets. The simulation threw everything at him. Multiple enemies, system failures, wingmen going down. He adapted, responded, survived. But in the back of his mind, he knew simulations were clean. Reality would be chaos. Lieutenant, his wingman called over the comm, you ever think about what happens if we lose? Seokjin was quiet for a moment. We don't lose. Because if we lose, those people die. And I'm not going to live with that. The hours counted down. The fleet was in FTL travel, hurtling through space faster than light itself. Inside the ships, time felt strange, stretched. Every minute was both too fast and too slow. Admiral Ji-won made a habit of walking through the ship. She visited the mess halls, the engine rooms, the medical bays. She talked to crew members, learned their names, listened to their concerns. Leadership wasn't just giving orders from the bridge. It was being present. It was showing the crew that she was with them, not above them. In one conversation, a young ensign asked her, Admiral, do you think we can win? Ji-won looked at the young man seriously. I think we have to. That's different from knowing we will. But when you have to win, when there's no other acceptable outcome, you find a way. You push harder, think faster, fight smarter. The Valdrine don't have to win. This is just another conquest for them. But for us, we have to win. That gives us an edge they don't have. The ensign seemed to take comfort in that. Ji-won hoped she was right. Commander Doyen was running the bridge crew through tactical scenarios when the navigation officer announced they were 10 hours from the Kellar system. The mood on the bridge shifted immediately. This was real now. No more drills, no more preparation time. All hands, this is the commander, Doyen said over the ship-wide comm. We're approaching our destination. Battle stations in 9 hours. Get rest while you can. Eat while you can. Make peace with whatever you need to make peace with. When we drop out of FTL, we go straight into combat. There will be no warnings, no negotiations. We are there to rescue the Yothari and stop the Valdrine. Whatever it takes, Doyen out. Across the fleet, similar announcements were being made. Crews secured equipment. Pilots climbed into cockpits. Gunners took positions at weapon stations. Medical teams prepared operating rooms. Everyone found their place in the great machine of war. Admiral Ji-won stood on the bridge of the Indomitable looking at the countdown timer. 9 hours. In 9 hours, humanity would either prove it co. The human fleet dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Kellar system with perfect precision, 77 warships materialized in normal space simultaneously, their sensors immediately sweeping the system, painting a picture of horror. The Yothari colony ship hung in space like a dying whale. Its hull was scarred with weapon impacts, venting atmosphere from dozens of breaches. Around it, like sharks circling prey, 23 Valdrine warships maintained their siege. Escape pods drifted everywhere, some intact, most destroyed. Bodies floated in the void. On the bridge of the Indomitable, the tactical officer's voice was tight with controlled anger. Confirmed 23 Valdrine vessels. Mix of destroyers, frigates, and 2 heavy cruisers. They're still hunting the escape pods, Admiral. They just destroyed 3 more while we were scanning. Admiral Jiwan's face could have been carved from stone. How many Yothari are still alive? The colony ship still has life signs. Approximately 31,000 aboard. Another 800 in surviving escape pods. The ship's shields are at 7% and falling. Time until shield collapse? 30 minutes. Maybe less. Jiwan looked at the tactical display. The Valdrine fleet was spread out, confident, unhurried. They had been hunting for days, taking their time, enjoying the sport of it. They had no idea they were being watched. Communications, hail the Valdrine fleet, all frequencies. The comm officer worked quickly. Channel open, Admiral. Valdrine vessels, this is Admiral Jiwan of the Terran Defense Fleet. You are attacking defenseless refugees in violation of every principle of civilized warfare. Cease fire immediately, release all survivors, and withdraw from this system. This is your only warning. On the Valdrine flagship, War Master Kothar listened to the transmission with amusement. He was a veteran of 30 campaigns, his body covered in the ritual scars of victory. This human admiral thought she could order him around? Ridiculous. Scan those ships, Kothar ordered. What are we dealing with? His tactical officer studied the sensor returns. Unknown configuration, War Master. They appear to be heavily armed but of inferior design. Primitive projectile weapons, electromagnetic shields. Nothing that can threaten our plasma batteries. Kothar laughed. Humans, I've heard of them. Traitors and diplomats. Soft species that prefers talk to action. He opened a return channel. Human Admiral, you are interfering in Valdrine sovereign operations. These refugees refuse to submit to Dominion authority. They are criminals and will be processed accordingly. Your presence here is illegal. Withdraw or be destroyed. To emphasize his point, Kothar ordered one of his frigates to fire on an escape pod. The plasma bolt struck true and the pod vanished in a flash of superheated vapor. 12 Yothari died in an instant. On the Indomitable's bridge, every crew member went silent. They had just watched murder happen right in front of them. Not in a recording. Not in a report. Right there in real time, Admiral Jiwan's voice was ice. Tactical, lock all weapons on Valdrine vessels. All ships break formation and engage. Rules of engagement, weapons free. Send a message to the Valdrine. Use the tungsten rounds. Commander Doyen understood immediately. The tungsten rounds were the Indomitable's most powerful ammunition. Solid slugs of dense metal, accelerated to a fraction of light speed by magnetic railguns. They were expensive, devastating, and sent a very clear message. Firing solution locked. Main railgun charging. Target is the Valdrine frigate that just fired on the escape pod. Fire. The Indomitable's main cannon spoke. There was no dramatic sound in space, no flash of light from the ship. But on the tactical display, a solid line appeared between the human dreadnought and the Valdrine frigate. The tungsten round traveled at 40,000 kilometers per second. The Valdrine shields had been designed to deflect energy weapons, to absorb plasma and laser fire. They were not prepared for solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. The round hit the frigate dead center, punched through the shields like they weren't there, tore through the hull and exited the other side. The frigate broke in half, atmosphere and crew venting into space. It was dead before anyone aboard knew they were under attack. Kothar stared at his tactical display in shock. What just, all ships, evasive maneuvers? His tactical officer screamed. The human fleet had already moved. While Kothar was processing what happened to his frigate, 40 human destroyers and frigates were accelerating to attack positions, their electronic warfare systems activated, jamming Valdrine communications and targeting systems. The carefully organized Valdrine formation dissolved into chaos. Lieutenant Seokjin led his fighter squadron out of the carrier Thunderbolt at full throttle. 200 fighters launched simultaneously, swarming toward the Valdrine destroyers like angry hornets. Alpha Squadron with me. Target the lead destroyer's shield generators. Beta Squadron, hit their weapon batteries. Charlie Squadron, cover our bombing run. Let's go. The Valdrine launched their own fighters, but they were disorganized, confused by the sudden assault. Sokjin's squadron hit them like a hammer. Human fighters were smaller, faster, more maneuverable. The pilots had trained together for years, moving as one coordinated unit. Sokjin locked onto a Valdrine fighter, waited for the tone, and fired. His missiles tracked true, slamming into the enemy's engines. The Valdrine fighter tumbled out of control, dead in space. Splash 1, Sokjin reported. Alpha Squadron, form up. Attack run in 10 seconds. On the heavy cruiser, Defiant engineer Minho watched as his rail cannons fired in sequence. Each shot was precisely calculated, targeting weak points in Valdrine's shield systems. The solid rounds punched through with brutal efficiency. Reload time 22 seconds, Minho called out. Fire control, prioritize the destroyers. Let's clear a path for the rescue ships. The battle was nothing like the Valdrine expected. They had fought dozens of species, conquered 17 star systems. They knew how space combat worked. Energy shields absorbed fire until they failed. Plasma weapons wore down defenses. Ships traded shots until one side broke. This was different. The humans weren't trading shots. They were executing a plan with machine precision. Frigates jammed communications. Destroyers targeted shield generators. Fighters exploited the gaps. Heavy cruisers delivered killing blows. It was coordination raised to an art form, and it was brutal. A Valdrine destroyer tried to bring its plasma batteries to bear on the Indomitable. Commander Doyen saw it coming. Helm, full power to forward shields. Weapons. Target that destroyer with everything we have. The destroyer fired first. Bright green plasma bolts crossed space and slammed into the Indomitable's shields. They held barely, the generators straining under the load. But the Indomitable returned fire with 8 rail cannon rounds simultaneously. The destroyer's shields collapsed under the first 3 hits. The next 5 tore the ship apart. Atmosphere vented. Hull sections broke away. The destroyer tumbled end over end, a gutted wreck. War Master Kothar was screaming orders into a communication system that wasn't responding. The humans had cut him off from half his fleet. His ships were fighting individually, without coordination, and they were dying. Get me targeting solutions on that dreadnought, Kothar demanded. Concentrate all fire on, an alarm screamed. His tactical officer looked up in horror. War Master, 4 human cruisers just jumped to our position. They're at point-blank range. The cruisers had used their superior navigation to jump short distances within the system, bypassing the Valdrine defensive line entirely. Now they were alongside Kothar's flagship, their rail cannons already firing. The flagship's shields held against the first volley. The second volley cracked them. The third volley punched through, and suddenly Kothar's ship was venting atmosphere, losing power, systems failing across all decks. Damage report, Kothar shouted, shields down, engines offline. Weapons batteries 1 through 6 destroyed, hull breaches on multiple decks. The tactical officer never finished. An explosion somewhere deep in the ship knocked everyone off their feet. While the battle raged, Coordinator Yuna was directing the rescue operation. Hospital ships moved toward the colony ship and the surviving escape pods, protected by a screen of human frigates. Mercy, this is Yuna. How many pods have you recovered? 47 so far. We're bringing them aboard as fast as we can. Most of the survivors are traumatized, some are injured. Dr. Nari is setting up triage. Keep going. Every life counts. On the hospital ship Mercy, Dr. Nari was working at a frantic pace. The Yothari were roughly humanoid, covered in fine fur with large eyes adapted for low light. They were small, fragile, and terrified. One young Yothari, barely a child, was carried in by Corpsman Jeho. The child was whimpering, clutching a torn, stuffed animal. Dr. Nari gently examined her, checking for injuries. You're safe now, Nari said softly, even though she knew the child probably couldn't understand. You're safe. No one is going to hurt you. The child looked up at her with huge, dark eyes. And then, slowly, the child reached out and touched Nari's face as if making sure she was real. Nari felt tears running down her cheeks. She wiped them away quickly and got back to work. There were hundreds more to save. On the battlefield, the Valdrine fleet was collapsing. Of the 23 ships that had been hunting refugees, 12 were destroyed. 6 more were crippled and drifting. The Galactic Council chambers were in complete chaos. Representatives from 47 species shouted over each other, their translation devices creating a cacophony of overlapping languages. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Mireille, exhausted but unbending, facing a wall of anger and accusations. Counselor Veltros, a massive creature with 4 arms and crystalline skin, slammed his appendages on the podium. His species had served on the council for 6 centuries, always careful, always cautious, always afraid of upsetting the powerful. "This is an outrage," Veltros bellowed. "Earth has committed an act of war without council authorization. They have attacked Valdrine forces in sovereign space. They have violated every treaty, every law, every principle of galactic order." The council chamber erupted in agreement. Representatives from species allied with the Valdrine demanded sanctions. Others, simply terrified of the Valdrine's potential response, wanted Earth condemned to protect themselves. Ambassador Mireille waited for the noise to die down. She stood perfectly still, her diplomatic training keeping her face neutral even as her hands shook with barely controlled fury. "Are you finished?" she asked quietly. The chamber went silent. Mireille walked to the center speaking platform, her footsteps echoing in the sudden quiet. She pulled out a data chip and inserted it into the chamber's holographic display system. "Before we continue this discussion about law and order, I want you to watch something." The lights dimmed, the hologram activated, showing the Kalar system from the perspective of human sensors. The council watched as the recording played. They saw the Yothari colony ship, helpless and dying. They saw the Valdrine ships hunting escape pods. They saw children, families, innocents being murdered systematically. Then they heard the voice. The Yothari captain's desperate plea, the screams in the background, the terror, the hopelessness. "This is colony ship Bright Hope, 40,000 souls. They're killing us. Please anyone help us, please." The recording ended. The chamber remained silent. Mireille's voice was steady but hard as steel. "That distress call was received by this council 4 hours before it reached human space. 4 hours. You had time to respond. You had time to act. You had time to save 40,000 lives." She paused. "What did you do?" Counselor Veltros started to speak, but Mireille cut him off. "I'll tell you what you did. You filed it as a situation under observation. You debated jurisdiction. You worried about Valdrine reactions. You did everything except the one thing that mattered. You didn't help them." "We had to consider the political ramifications," another counselor protested. "Political ramifications?" Mireille's voice rose. 40,000 people were dying and you considered politics?" She pulled up another hologram, this one showing the aftermath of the battle. "This is what political consideration looks like. 8,200 dead, 8,200 bodies floating in space because you were too afraid to act." The chamber erupted again, but this time it was different. Some counselors were shouting in agreement with Mireille. Others were trying to defend their inaction. The consensus was breaking. The Valdrine ambassador, a tall figure in dark armor, stood. His voice was cold and threatening. "The Valdrine Dominion demands justice. Your species attacked our fleet without provocation. 23 ships destroyed. Over 4,000 Valdrine dead. This is an act of war and we will respond accordingly. Hand over Admiral Jiwan and the commanders of your fleet for trial. Pay reparations, and withdraw from galactic affairs permanently, or face the full might of the Dominion's military forces." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Everyone knew the Valdrine Dominion commanded one of the largest military forces in known space. Hundreds of ships, millions of soldiers, resources from 17 conquered systems. Mireille turned to face the Valdrine ambassador directly. "Is that a threat?" "It is a promise." "Good. Then let me make a promise in return." Mireille's voice dropped, becoming even more dangerous in its quietness. "You want Admiral Jiwan? Come and take her. You want reparations? Come and collect. You want war?" She smiled without humor. "You've already got one, because Earth will not surrender people who saved lives. We will not apologize for stopping a massacre, and we will not back down from bullies no matter how big you think you are." The Valdrine ambassador's voice became a snarl. "You don't understand what you've started. The Dominion will send 300 ships to Earth. We will burn your colonies. We will break your fleets. We will show the galaxy what happens to species who defy us." "Do it," Mireille said simply. "Send your 300 ships. Because I promise you, by the time you reach Earth, you'll wish you only faced 23. Before the Valdrine could respond, a new voice called out from the back of the chamber. "Counselor, I request permission to speak." Everyone turned. A small figure was making her way to the speaking platform. She was Yothari, her fur still matted with dried blood, her body wrapped in medical bandages. It was Elin, the captain of the colony ship Bright Hope. Veltros looked uncomfortable. "This is highly irregular. You are not a council member." "I am a survivor," Elin said quietly, "and I have something to say." The council murmured, but no one objected. Elin climbed onto the platform, standing next to Mireille. She was barely 4 feet tall, thin and fragile looking, but her voice carried across the chamber. "My name is Elin. 3 days ago, I was the captain of a colony ship carrying the last survivors of my world. Our star went supernova. We barely escaped. We had children aboard. Families. Elders. People who had never hurt anyone in their lives." Her voice cracked, but she continued. "We were running on emergency power trying to reach a safe system when the Valdrine found us. They said we had to submit to their rule or die. We begged for mercy. We explained we were refugees. They didn't care." Elin pulled up her own recording showing the attack from inside the colony ship. The council watched in horrified silence as Valdrine ships opened fire. As escape pods were hunted, as people screamed and died, we sent distress calls to 17 different governments. 17. We begged for help from the Galactic Council, from nearby systems, from anyone who could hear us. Tears were running down her face now. No one came. No one answered. For 3 days we died slowly, watching our people get picked off one by one. We gave up hope. We prepared for the end. She paused, wiping her eyes with a bandaged hand. And then humans arrived. A species we had never heard of. A people we had no treaties with, no shared history, no connection whatsoever. They came because we asked for help. They fought because we were dying. 83 humans died saving my people. 83 lives given for strangers. Elin turned to face Counselor Veltros directly. "You want to condemn Earth for breaking your laws? Your laws said to let us die. Your laws said politics matter more than lives. Your laws said it's better to be comfortable than to be good." Her voice rose. "Then your laws are wrong, and any government that follows them is complicit in murder." The chamber exploded. Half the council was shouting in outrage at Elin's words. The other half was shouting in agreement. Fights nearly broke out between representatives. Ambassador Mireille waited for the chaos to peak, then spoke into the noise. Her voice cut through everything. "Earth withdraws from the Galactic Council. Effective immediately." The chamber went dead silent. "We will no longer participate in a system that punishes mercy and rewards cruelty. We will no longer seek permission to do what's right. And we will no longer pretend that laws matter more than lives." Mireille collected her materials and prepared to leave. Before she did, she turned back one final time. "To the species who wanted us condemned, you got your wish. Earth is gone from your council. But remember this. The next time you're in trouble, the next time you need help, the next time your people are dying and you send out a distress call, we'll still answer. Because that's who humans are. We help even when it's not required. Even when it's not convenient. Even when it costs us everything." She looked at the Valdrine ambassador. "And to the Dominion you wanted war? You have it. Send your 300 ships. But understand something. The 23 ships Admiral Jiwan destroyed, they died in 40 minutes. We weren't even trying hard. When you come to Earth, we'll show you what humans are really capable of when we're motivated." Ambassador Mireille and Elin walked out of the council chambers together. Behind them, chaos reigned. The galactic order, unchanged for centuries, was collapsing. Within hours, the news spread across every inhabited world. Earth had withdrawn from the Galactic Council. The Valdrine Dominion had declared war on humanity, and the galaxy had to choose sides. Most governments stayed neutral, terrified of the consequences either way. But some made different choices. On 14 Valdrine-occupied worlds, resistance movements suddenly found courage. If humans could stand up to the Dominion, maybe they could too. Rebellions began, small at first but growing. On other worlds, species that had been quiet for decades started asking questions. Why did they need the Council? What had the Council ever done for them? Why should they follow laws that protected the powerful and abandoned the weak? The Galactic Council tried to maintain control, but the cracks were showing. They had existed for so long on the principle that stability mattered more than justice. Now humanity had proven that principle false. You could fight. You could win. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Kalar. 6 months since Earth withdrew from the Galactic Council. 6 months since the Valdrine Dominion declared war on humanity. They were the busiest 6 months in human history. Every shipyard from Earth to the Outer Rim worked day and night. Old warships were pulled from storage and refitted. New designs were rushed into production. Weapons that had been theoretical became reality. The entire human economy shifted to a war footing and nobody complained. Everyone understood what was at stake. The Valdrine were coming. Intelligence reports confirmed it. 312 ships, the largest invasion fleet ever assembled. They were moving slowly, methodically, gathering forces from across Valdrine space. Their target was clear, Earth itself. They would bypass human colonies, ignore smaller targets, and strike directly at humanity's heart. Destroy Earth and the resistance would collapse. It was a good plan. It might have even worked if humans were anyone else. Admiral Jiwan stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the tactical display. The human fleet had gathered at Terra Nova, the shipyards orbiting Mars. Every ship that could fly, every crew that could fight, had answered the call. 123 warships. It was everything humanity had. 3 carriers with full fighter wings, 15 heavy cruisers, 32 destroyers, 58 frigates, and 17 support vessels that had been converted to carry additional weapons. Against the Valdrine's 300, it looked pathetic, but numbers didn't tell the whole story. Commander Doyen approached carrying a datapad. Final count, Admiral. 72,000 personnel across the fleet. Ammunition stocks at maximum. All ships report ready for combat. G1 nodded. And the new shield systems? Installed and tested. The Yothari energy distribution design worked perfectly. Our shields can now absorb 30% more damage before failing. Doyen smiled slightly. The Yothari scientists said it was their way of repaying the debt. The Yothari had been busy since their rescue. The 31,000 survivors had settled on 3 human worlds, welcomed with open arms. Their scientists, brilliant in fields humanity had never explored, worked alongside human researchers. Their engineers helped in shipyards. Their doctors trained in human medicine to help wounded soldiers. They couldn't fight. Their peaceful nature made violence nearly impossible for them. But they could help those who fought for them. Aylin, the Yothari colony ship captain, had become an unofficial ambassador. She traveled to human military academies speaking to troops about to deploy. Her message was always the same. Remember what you're fighting for. Remember who needs you. Remember that every battle you win saves lives. Lieutenant Seokjin sat in his fighter cockpit running pre-flight checks. His squadron had been expanded to 48 fighters, and he was now wing commander, responsible for coordinating multiple squadrons. It was a huge promotion, earned through skill and survival. He had fought in 7 battles over the last 6 months, each one against Valdrine forces probing human defenses. He had 53 confirmed kills now. But he didn't think about the numbers. He thought about the faces of the people he was protecting. Wing Commander, this is Control. Status check. All fighters ready. Pilots are nervous but prepared. We've drilled the attack patterns until we can fly them in our sleep. Good. The Valdrine should arrive in approximately 4 hours. Get some rest, Seokjin almost laughed. Rest? 4 hours before the biggest battle in human history. But he closed his eyes anyway, trying to calm his racing heart. On the hospital ship Mercy, Dr. Nari was organizing medical supplies. Every trauma kit, every surgical suite, every bed was prepared. She had trained 200 additional medics over the last 6 months. They would need every one of them. Corpsman Jeho was checking blood supplies when a group of Yothari entered the medical bay. They were carrying boxes. We wanted to help, one of them said in broken human language. These are medical supplies from our world. Plants that help with pain, healing compounds. We teach your medics how to use them? Jeho felt emotion rising in his throat. Even now, even before the battle, the Yothari were trying to save human lives. Thank you, he managed to say. That means everything. In the weapons bay of the cruiser Defiant, engineer Minho was making final adjustments to the rail cannon systems. Over the last 6 months, he had improved the firing rate by 15% and increased the projectile velocity by 8%. It didn't sound like much, but in combat, small improvements saved lives. His assistant approached nervously. Sir, what do you think our chances are? Minho looked at the young engineer. Honestly, the Valdrine have better numbers, more experience in large-scale warfare, more resources. On paper, we should lose. The assistant looked terrified. But, Minho continued, they don't have what we have. They don't have a reason beyond conquest. They don't have people depending on them, and they don't have the absolute certainty that losing is not an option. He patted the rail cannon. This weapon doesn't care about odds. It just destroys what you pointed at, same as us. We don't win because we're stronger. We win because we refuse to lose. The hours counted down. 3 hours. 2 hours. 1 hour, then the sensors lit up. Admiral FTL signatures detected at system edge. Multiple contacts, counting. 307 vessels. It's them. Admiral G1 stood straight. All ships, battle stations. Launch all fighters. Activate shield systems. Communications, open a channel to the fleet. Across 123 human ships, the message went out. This was it. Everything they had prepared for, everything they had trained for was about to happen. This is Admiral G1 to all vessels. The Valdrine fleet has arrived. They came here to destroy us, to make an example of Earth, to show the galaxy that defiance has consequences. She paused. They're about to learn a different lesson. That humanity protects its own. That we stand for those who cannot stand. And that we do not lose. All ships hold formation. Wait for my command. Let them come to us. Make them fight on our terms. The Valdrine fleet advanced in a massive wedge formation, designed to punch through defensive lines and overwhelm with superior numbers. At the center, on the flagship Domination, War Master Threxen studied the tactical displays with satisfaction. Threxen had been planning this moment for months. He had studied every battle humans had fought, analyzed their tactics, identified their weaknesses. He had also learned from Kothar's mistake. The humans were not weak. They were dangerous, but they were also outnumbered and outgunned. Superior numbers would prevail. It always did. Deploy the fleet in attack formation. Heavy cruisers in the vanguard. Destroyers in support. Frigates to harry their flanks. When we're in range, concentrate all fire on their capital ships. Break their fleet. Then move on to planetary bombardment. The Valdrine formation was beautiful in its brutality. 300 ships moving with precision, weapons charged, shields at maximum. They had fought wars across 17 systems. They had crushed rebellions and conquered civilizations. They knew how to wage war, but they had never fought humans before. Admiral G1 waited until the Valdrine fleet was fully committed to their attack run. Then she gave the order, execute Plan Arcturus. All ships now. The human fleet suddenly split apart. The carefully organized defensive formation dissolved as ships scattered in multiple directions. It looked like panic. It looked like the humans were running. It was a trap. The human ships hadn't scattered randomly. They had moved to predetermined positions in the asteroid field surrounding Mars, positions they had spent 6 months preparing. Positions equipped with hidden weapon platforms, shield generators, and missile batteries. Threxen realized the deception too late. It's an ambush. All ships defensive formation. The asteroids erupted with weapons fire. Rail cannons, missiles, and laser batteries opened up from positions the Valdrine sensors hadn't detected. The Valdrine vanguard, advancing confidently, suddenly found themselves in a killing field. Ships exploded. Shields overloaded. The beautiful formation became chaos. Return fire. Threxen screamed, "Destroy those platforms!" But the platforms were only the first surprise. As the Valdrine turned their attention to the fixed defenses, the human fleet attacked. They came from above and below, using the asteroids for cover, striking at weak points with precision. Commander Doyen led the Indomitable in a devastating attack run on a Valdrine heavy cruiser. All batteries fire. The cruiser's shields absorbed the first volley. The second cracked them. The third punched through, and the cruiser's engines exploded. It drifted, crippled and burning. Lieutenant Seokjin led 4 squadrons in a coordinated strike on Valdrine destroyers. The fighters moved like a school of fish, swarming and overwhelming individual targets. Valdrine fighters tried to intercept, but the human pilots had trained together for months. They knew each other's movements, covered each other's blind spots, fought as one organism. Alpha Wing, target those shield generators. Beta Wing, hit their engines. Charlie Wing, cover our exit. Go, go, go. Missiles launched. Cannons fired. A Valdrine destroyer's shields collapsed and fighter-launched torpedoes tore into its hull. It broke apart, adding to the growing field of debris. The battle raged for hours. The Valdrine had numbers, but the humans had preparation. Every asteroid had been positioned,